Hey, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of What Are You Selling? With me today is Kate Seger, the author of the Ethereal Realms series, and so much more involved in that as well. Um, Delighted to have you on that you can talk to us about your books and about you. But first of all, how are you doing this fine morning in your part of the world?
I'm doing great. We're supposed to get our first snow of the season today, so that's kind of
Excellent.
exciting. How about you?
We're in the middle of a red level storm at the moment that's been going on for 2 days. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, no snow unfortunately. It's just wind and rain to the point where all the schools have been cancelled. So my son is free. It's his birthday next week, so he's usually with me in the morning. He's at school for 3 hours in the morning at creche, daycare as you would call it, and then he's back. But he's been with me for the last couple of mornings. But my parents have swept in to take him away so I can do this
Take a
afternoon.
breather.
Yeah. Because like I don't know about you, what your routine is like or anything for writing, but I do a lot of my writing in the morning now with him at daycare, and then I do a little bit in the evenings. So the last couple of days, I've been like, I'm getting so far behind on all my deadlines.
Yep. I do in the morning or when I'm supposed to be sleeping. Those are like my two times.
That is the way, isn't it? That is the way. So why don't you tell people that are watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple Music, and if you are, whichever one it is that you're doing, if you please give us a subscribe or a follow on the channel. We have loads of interviews, we have reviews, we have readings from authors, which more are going to be happening in the new year, and we also have the Wheel of Time show as well, called Easing the Reader. So do check us out. So Kate, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and about your series that you've got, because you've got quite a few books available that are all to do with this one world that you've created.
Mhm. Well, I am a full-time editor and freelance writer and freelance editor and freelance writer now. I quit my day job in finance during 2020 because it was just getting ridiculous with all the craziness. But I'm really loving doing that. And that is kind of what gave me the time to complete all these books in the series because they're all published between 2019 and now, obviously. Um, so that was kind of my impetus to finally get the ball rolling on something that's been a dream forever. Um, but the Ethereal Realms series is basically a portal fantasy. It starts out with a mortal, as far as we know, girl named Arianette, who is just going about her business, a little bit ostracized by the people around her because she has some weird little abilities, not quite magic, but not along the same beaten path as everyone else. And one day she is just kidnapped and thrown into a fairy circle and appears in this magical world called the Ethereal Realms. And it's a young adult series, so it's very much kind of it's a little dark, but it's very much a coming of age story where she has to find who she is. They all believe she's this chosen one who's going to rescue the ethereal realms from oncoming catastrophe. And she's like, you guys are crazy. Like, I'm just a girl. I don't know what you're talking about. So it's, it kind of has that whole vibe to it that a lot of YA books have, but with a bit of a different spin. It has the Fae, so there's a lot of fairy courts and that sort of thing. But yeah, and right now there's the first and second novels in the series are available, which is The Wood Witch's Daughter and The Last Dreamer. And the third book, which is the final book, The Legion Queen, will be out hopefully. I'm really trying to finish by February 28th.
Oh,
And then
okay.
there's two side novellas, which were side characters who decided they just wanted their own thing. So that would be.
They do. They sometimes do, don't they? They're like, listen, just write a story about me, please. I'm very
I
interested.
was like, this story does not belong in this book, but like, obviously it's a good story.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I
Like,
wrote Red Rain and what's the other one called? The Ship's Maiden, just to get those characters off my back.
and Red Rain is you've kind of introduced that as 0.5 of the series, isn't it? So it's like it works as a prequel to the series.
Yeah, basically, it's things that happened before the story, and some of the characters from book one are actually in it many years before. So it's the storyline is different, but it does have similar characters, so you can kind of get to know them. before you dive into the meat of the story. So it's a bit of a prequel, but not the same storyline.
Yes. Okay. And so when did you you said before that this was a dream for you to do this full time, and congratulations for being able to do it full time as well. Because I'll ask you a little bit more about that in a little while. Actually, remind me if I forget, because I want to ask you. So how long when did this idea for this world that you've created, when did that appear, and is it something that you've always kind of had in the back of your mind, or was it just like one day you just woke up and you were like, I have an idea for this world?
Well, the first Portal fantasy I started to write when I was 14 years old, and I actually still have it all printed out on pieces of paper in my closet. And this story is not that story. It didn't turn out to be that story, but that is, I think, when the whole Portal fantasy seed was planted. This particular series, I was going to do something completely different for National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, in 2019. And then I drank a little too much wine and went to bed and had crazy dreams. And from those crazy dreams emerged this particular story. So I threw aside all my pre-writing that I'd done for a month before and was like, let's just try this. So the whole idea of a Portal fantasy has been floating around forever, but this particular story was fueled by wine.
Well, wine is a great inspiration for many writers. I've written many a word whilst under the influence of a little bit of wine. It's funny you should say about dreams, actually, because you're the second person that I've spoken to recently that were like, I had such a vivid dream about something that I woke up and wrote the story. Which is
it's unusual.
amazing.
I wish it happened more often.
Yeah, because I can never remember any of my dreams these days. I used to be able to, but now, so maybe I'm having loads of ideas that I just can't remember.
Like I said, it was not. I don't normally remember dreams well enough to write a story about them, or if I do, it's some stupid dream about how I'm stuck at work and something ridiculously boring is happening. But this particular one, I guess it was kismet because it stuck around.
Yeah, exactly. So, since you were 14, you've been wanting to write a Portal fantasy. Is that were those the things that you used to read as a child? Without like I suppose Narnia would be the most famous Portal fantasy.
Exactly. Chronicles of Narnia, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. I stole the Dark Tower series from my dad's bookshelf when I was 11, and my mom was like, I'm not really sure that's appropriate for you to be reading, but whatever, you're already halfway through, so go ahead.
Yeah,
but yeah, I've always really enjoyed fantasy in general, and particularly Portal fantasies.
What is it about Portal fantasies that you enjoy, and what is it about Portal fantasies that for people that aren't as familiar with them, that might be watching or listening, what is it that grabs you about them, and what would interest them?
Well, I'm very much an escapist, and if I saw a therapist, they would probably tell me that I run away from all my problems to fantasy worlds. So I think that is the draw of them. You basically are taking a normal everyday character who's not that different from you or I, and transporting them into this magical world where all kinds of crazy things that could never happen in reality. Oh, there goes my light. Happen. Yeah, so I think that's the draw, is that you're taking a regular person and putting them in completely outlandish scenarios and seeing how they cope with that new world that they're in.
Yeah. So you've recently given up the day job and you've become a full-time writer doing editing and freelance work. How long did that journey take? Because I know you said there everything has been published in this series from 2019, but were you working on stuff behind the scenes before that, or is it just literally since 2019
I was part-time freelance editing on the side for maybe 3 years, and so I had a client base for editing already kind of built up, just for my side projects, and I was using platforms like Fiverr and Upwork, which thankfully I've mostly outgrown because the fees are crazy. But yeah, that's how it started. I started doing it as a side thing, and then I was making enough money editing that I could quit my day job, which then kind of freed up my schedule to do more writing for me.
Well, you must be pretty good at it, and if people keep on coming back to you.
Yeah, I hope so. I think so. I
Yeah,
was a creative writing degree, so had a creative writing degree. So at least I have some background in the field, and I'm a very avid reader. So
yeah,
I think
yeah. So
I'm
if anyone's watching that needs an editor, there we go. There's one right here. So when you're writing your own stuff, how hard is it to? Because I think everyone writer thinks I can do a bit of editing, right? But obviously, editing is its own skill, and it's you want to go. It's not just about fixing typos and making sure sentences make sense. It's developing stories and pulling things out and seeing if it works, if something works here, or maybe it works better over here. I'll go in a little bit more detail in this section. How easy is it for you to kind of turn that part of your brain off when you're writing your own work, just to kind of get that draft out, or do you kind of develop it as you are working on it as well, and you just find it difficult to separate the
I
two?
do not edit my rough drafts at all.
Right.
I do not go back. I won't even look back and read them. I just because I am an editor and I have that instinct, I will pick and pick and pick, and it will take me 500 years to ever actually finish the story, I think. So I just kind of bang out my rough drafts. And then once the first draft is written, then I'll go back over it. And I advise this to other people too, even though I'm an editor, I use editors. I do not believe that I or most people are capable of getting far enough outside
Yeah.
their work to actually, at least developmentally, at least, to realize what the strengths and weaknesses are and where you could improve the story. I always use developmental editor.
Yeah, it's essential. Like, there's some bits. I mean, I'm working on a sequel at the moment, and it's going quite well. I think I've been showing it to. What I generally do is I usually do a few chapters at a time, then show it to like a couple of beta readers, and then work on the other chapters as
Yep,
they're reading
that
it.
works too.
And then, but like there was a chapter that I was finished with, and I was like, oh man, nothing happens in this chapter. It's so slow, and it's like, and sometimes you need a slow chapter just to kind of recover from a few things. But I was like, this chapter, they're all gonna hate this chapter, and they're gonna be like, well, do this. And they loved it. And they were like, this chapter is amazing. Like, and they loved the slow pace of it and this and this. So it just goes to show sometimes for me, I would have been looking at it and been like, I need to redo this entire thing because it just doesn't work, right? And then other times you'll have a chapter where it's like, I love this chapter. I think it's great. And then people are like,
Everyone
what?
hates it.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
first book, I kind of tried to do it myself, and I cut a lot of scenes before I even sent it to beta readers. And then when I sent it to them, they were asking me questions like, well, what if like you included like some discussion about this, that, or the other thing? And I'm like, oh, I had that, but I took it out. Like, so
Yeah.
now I just, as long as it's clean enough, I send them everything and I let them just, my editors and my beta readers decide what needs to go.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way, isn't it? Because I mean, my first fantasy book that I brought out, I think I underwrote it at the start when I sent it off to get to the publishers and stuff like that. And thankfully they saw enough of it where they were like, this is good enough to work on. But it almost doubled in size from when
Yeah.
we were on. It was all stuff that I was kind of like, I'd like to do that, but maybe I won't. So what I kind of learned from that was just to overwrite everything, just put more stuff in, because it's better to take things out.
Yeah, then to all of a sudden realize you have to write a whole bunch of new content. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And that stuff that you take out, you can always put it aside and maybe do a little,
For
you
something
know,
else.
do something else with it. Stick it in a newsletter or something like that behind the scenes. Like, this is a little snippet and all that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of fascinated as your experience as an editor though as well, and because obviously you're a writer, so you have you see both sides of coins. How do you deal with writers that don't take your advice particularly well, and have you dealt with them?
It's your book, not mine. That's all you can do is make your suggestions. Some people get upset, and then I just remind them that, if you don't agree, that's your prerogative. It is your book. This is how I feel. I'm one person. Maybe you should give it to some beta readers or somebody else to see if they agree with me. And maybe it's just, I'm a human being. I'm not an algorithm. So I like what I like. And
Yeah.
perhaps it's just personal. But yeah, most people are I have not dealt with a lot of particularly unpleasant people. Sometimes they don't agree,
Mhm.
which is fine. That's their prerogative. But I haven't really had anyone come like screaming, wanting to claw my eyeballs out or anything because of something I said about one of their. And I try to be very tactful, and put the good with the bad, not just like everything's terrible, fix it,
Yeah, she hates
So,
that book. She hates it.
yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing as well when you are editing. I think that's um, I've seen some people go the other way where it's like they accept every single thing that the editor says, and sometimes, as you said, an editor is just another person, and they might not respond to a certain thing that other people do, or the writer might just absolutely just think it is necessary to the story they want to tell, and they have to fight for it sometimes.
Mhm. A lot of times I'll even say in the comments, I'll say, this is completely subjective,
Yeah,
because I'll realize that what I'm saying might be a personal bias and I know that I have. So I will point that out in advance, but I still make the comment because if I have that personal bias, there's a chance other people do too. So they might
yeah.
want to consider it.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So let's go back to the Ethereal Realms. Obviously, there's Fae involved in this. So is that another thing that you've been like kind of passionate for a while, or was it something that you just thought, you know what, this will suit what it is that I'm trying to do with this story?
It's kind of like multi-level. My mom is Irish and my
Okay,
dad is Scottish and German. So I
right.
kind of have that background on both sides of my family with, the Fae and
Yeah.
the fairy courts and all that. But I am also a huge Sarah J. Maas and Holly Black fan, who they're like huge influences, who
Mhm.
also write stories about the Fae. So
Yeah.
I'm not copying them, but when you have an inspiration and it's something you already like, it kind of makes sense to pick up that same path.
Yeah, to bring them in there. Oh, and obviously now you're talking to someone based in Ireland, so they're just all down the road from me. All these for me, just round the corner.
My mom went to Ireland for my cousin's wedding, but I was in college and I couldn't take time off and I was so jealous. I've never been one day.
Yeah, it's amazing the amount of people that I suppose it's only a small place, so like if everyone who wanted to come to Ireland came to Ireland, there'd be no space for everyone else. I think it'd be filled with us all. So what is next for you? So you said before that book 3 is you're hoping to get it out for 28th of February 2022. Is that the last book in the series, or is there more to come?
That's the last book in this series.
Ooh.
I'm hoping to do I'm not hoping. I plan on doing a like more of a high fantasy kind of political intrigue sort of, which I started years ago and I pulled it out of a drawer and I was like, oh, this is actually pretty good. And I thought it sucked.
Yeah.
So I plan when I finish the series to pick that back up and try to go from there. But I do also have 3 books rapid releasing in December, which are just novellas. They're all fairy tale retellings.
Okay.
Um, so that's also on my plate, but those are done and just waiting to release. One released on the 1st, then another comes out on the 15th, and another on the 30th.
Yeah, I think the pre-order pages are up on Amazon for them at the moment, aren't
Mhm.
they?
Yep.
Yes. So they will all be in the show notes below as well for anyone watching and listening. All of Kate's details will below that you can go and give them a check out. So what kind of fairy tales are you retelling on those ones?
The first one, which is available now, I did Red Riding Hood.
Okay.
It's called Tooth and Nail, but it's a very dystopian kind of dark twist on Red Riding Hood.
Okay.
Red Riding Hood is basically a vampire who is smuggling blood to her starving people because they need blood to survive. And the werewolves were bred to protect the city from the undead. So
Right.
they're basically mortal enemies. But when they run into each other and the werewolf can't bring himself to kill Red Riding Hood,
Mhm.
it kind of begins a tumultuous romance that pits their people against one another in an ultimate battle. And I don't want to give everything away, but
I see.
it's a little bit of a different spin.
Yeah, that's interesting. Red Riding Hood is a vampire. I don't think I've ever come across that before. That's very unique. I like it.
I just wanted to do something, you know, off the beaten track,
Yeah,
but I didn't want to come up with my whole plot line, so I stole someone else's and
yeah.
twisted it
Well,
around.
That's what a retailing is, isn't it? It's just like, I'm gonna, some of the work's already done. I'm gonna do my own thing with this.
Yeah, exactly. And there's such classic stories that like I think I've read a dozen like Snow White retellings and I still love them and I'll still read them all. So
Yeah. I mean, it's intriguing to see what people have done with it. Sometimes, you go in and see what new spin that they've put on there, which is part of the.
yeah.
And and as well, like so many things are inspired by fairy tales as well. Like,
Yeah.
I'm rewatching The Matrix at the moment because the new film's out at the end of the month, and obviously, like, there's so much Alice in Wonderland stuff in the.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
It's just that's just the way it is. So rapid release in December, another release in February, and then straight to work on your high fantasy series.
Yep. Basically.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
plan.
that's a good plan. That's a good plan. So for the people that are watching at home, where can people find you on the wide web?
I am basically at Kate Seger author everywhere. I'm on my Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, my Facebook group, which is where we kind of get a little more in depth and personal, and I share stuff with them that other people don't get to see. Sorry, everyone else. Is called Court of Dreams. So that's Facebook groups, Court of Dreams. Yeah, and my website is Kate Seger author. So everything is Kate Seger author. And I'm on TikTok, but I have no freaking idea what I'm doing. So you'll just have to embarrass myself
Yeah.
on there because I'm old
Yeah.
and I don't know all this newfangled stuff.
Yeah, I'm on TikTok too, and I was doing a few videos at first, and then I just fell out of doing them. I was like, oh, I'm too tired to do all this.
I don't think I'm funny enough. I'm like, these are all funny, and I'm not really that funny, so this is not working for me.
That could be the video. You could do that one. It's like, I'm trying to do TikTok videos, but I'm just not funny enough to do them. I'm
Yep.
sure that one would do quite well. Buy my book at the end of it.
Yeah, buy my book. I'm not funny. Sorry.
Yeah. Buy my book so I can get comedy lessons. Right. Kate, thanks so much for coming on. I really enjoyed talking to you, and best of luck with the rapid releases this month. And everyone who's at home, do check them out. They're on Amazon. The first book is out now. The rest of them are out onto pre-order, and obviously the Ethereal Realms series that is there as well. Kate, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And everyone else, see you next time.